Innovate. Enable. CNBC TV 18 Moneycontrol New Horizon 2.0 presented by GE HealthCare.
Hello and welcome to GE Presents New Horizons 2.0 in association with Moneycontrol. I'm your host, Paramita Chatterjee. Now, during this series, we've been discussing a whole host of technology and the advancements that are there today in the world, and particularly here in India. And today's topic of discussion will be making India a global MedTech hub. Just to give you all a background before I introduce the panelists, in terms of India being a market for medical devices in Asia, it's seen as the fourth largest market in Asia amongst the top 20 markets globally, and it has the potential to grow even further. Indeed, this could be the inflection point where India could take the lead as far as medical devices is concerned. Of course, we all know about our strengths. India's strength lies in its skilled manpower, the ease of business through its industry-friendly rules, and a huge domestic market as well. In fact, the current market size of medical devices in the country is estimated at $11 billion, and it could be termed as a sunrise sector for the economy. And as we focus on the medical device industry, there have been several schemes as well that have been launched. The growth has been boosted by the Departmental Production Linked Incentive Scheme for medical devices, along, of course, with the establishment of medical device parks across the country. There's also a new India medical devices policy, which is currently at the interministerial consultation stage. So a lot is being done to really promote medical devices and really bring about the spirit of Atmanirbharta, particularly in the light of the post-pandemic requirements that we saw here in our country. So to discuss the potential, what more needs to be done, let me introduce you to our very special lineup of panelists who are joining us on the show today, starting with Dr. Shravan Subramanyam, who is the Managing Director at Wipro GE HealthCare, Dr. Sahajanand Prasad Singh, President, Indian Medical Association, Sunil Khurana, CEO and MD, BPL Medical Devices Limited, Girish Krishnamurthy, MD and CEO, Tata Medical and Diagnostics Limited. Thank you so much for joining us on the show and really trying to explore medical devices industry and what lies ahead. Dr. Shravan Subramanyam, let me start with you. And in terms of the potential, of course, as far as the medical devices industry is concerned, India is seen as being positioned in a particularly sweet spot when it comes to cost advantages. There's also the draft National Medical Devices Policy, which is laying out a clearer roadmap because there have been some policy concerns in the past. And exports are poised to reach about $10 billion by 2025. But we can't take away from the fact that imports are still a very large part of the medical devices industry that we see in India. In fact, almost 80% of the devices are currently imported. So how and what more do you think is required in order for India to emerge as one of the top 5 medical devices manufacturers in the world today?
Paramita, thank you so much. This is a good question. And in order to talk about the future, I should address a little bit about what's been happening in the past. And that will give you a sense that we are at an inflection point. I was just speaking to some experts in the industry a short while ago, and they were telling me how, 25, 30 years ago, it was quite a struggle to establish medical device framework across India. Importing products was onerous, getting a loan sanctioned was very challenging. Today, we have a lot of schemes that make it easier for us to function in the environment. As you called out earlier, we have the production incentive, which is encouraging medical technology manufacturing plants in the country. But really, what it takes is for the whole ecosystem to really come to the next level, right? And for that, I'm talking about the healthcare ecosystem. And we're seeing that. We've seen that just in the last 2-3 years, thanks to COVID, healthcare infrastructure has expanded significantly. And it's not just the major cities, but also the smaller towns, the tier 2 locations, as we call them. They are also seeing a lot of activity in healthcare infrastructure. Next, we need to think about skills, right? It's not enough if we just invest in infrastructure. But do we have the skills and the capabilities that are required to put these sophisticated products together? Third, you consider the advantages that India has in addition to medical devices, which is very elaborate IT infrastructure and our talent. At Wipro GE, for example, we have about 1,800 engineers that are developing products, not only in India, but in India for the world. So really, Paramita, the entire ecosystem needs to come together. And once all these pieces are put together, you'll start seeing some growth above what we've seen the last couple of decades. And in order to do what you were speaking about, 80% of products are imported at this point. At Wipro GE, it's probably a lot less. But as a country, as we move forward, I think India has a lot of potential to manufacture locally for country as well as export.
Dr. Singh, we heard from Dr. Shravan about some of the factors which are required. What else do you see as being, key points that need to be enabled in order for us to really see that kind of growth potential in this industry?
In India, it is very much essential to make a new medical devices. It is very much essential at the time of pandemic, very useful. Those who have made these devices for the patients. For the medical devices, we have to make newer and newer, so that India is becoming independent of the medical devices.
Let's go across to Sunil Khurana. Your company has really been trying to bring across that kind of Atmanirbharta or self-reliance when it comes to medical devices. Take us through at this point in time, how do policies like the National Medical Device Promotion Council, which is being recently reconstituted under the Department of Pharmaceuticals, how do you think measures such as this will really help players such as yourself to realize the full potential and meet the kind of demand that we see in our country?
Thanks, Paramita. This is quite interesting question, and we all know that NMDPC is a very newly formed body. I see a couple of opportunities, objectives, and challenges with them. So how I look at it, that they must be struggling, that why FDI, which was 100% through special route, why has that not picked up? What are the issues? How to maximize the funding? That could be one their big issue. What I want to also tell, and they clearly understand, between pharma and medical devices, these are two completely different streams. I mean, when we talk only medical device, it itself is so complex that you start from sutures and syringes or gloves and go up to ECGs, patient monitor, C-arms, CT, MR, PET CT, cyclotron, linear accelerator, such complex product. So it's a very different space as compared to pharma. That's a one differentiation one has to clearly understand. And as they move forward, they have to actually address the gaps. And those gaps are today regulatory frameworks in my mind. And there has to be clearly a new vertical which needs to be created under Ministry of Health. I mean, that will actually fuel it. That's how I look at it. Because it cannot be on very long term a part of only pharma if we want to become in next 20 years $100 billion business, which is easy. Only 30% cumulative growth can take us to that level. But there has to be a very focused department who drives under probably medical health ministry. Like we know that we have for even food, we have a different body. We have pharma as a different body. This needs to be third body. So I guess these are the areas they need to come and address, and not under the lens of pharma only.
Mr. Krishnamurthy, how do you respond to some of the points raised by Sunil Khurana, especially when it comes to partnerships, bringing in FDI? Because what we've seen is also a very unequal spread when it comes to accessibility of healthcare. Today, most of it is concentrated in urban cities and including access to medical devices such as CTs and MRIs and so on. And whereas, a lot of the demand is actually in the rural area. How can we really bridge this gap? I mean, your company has so many collaborations at the forefront.
So let me first, from the medical device and diagnostics perspective, let us look at the access problem in two dimensions. That's why I look at it. Number one, the disease portfolio of India is little different compared to a lot of global footprint. See, today's India's biggest problem is some of the key diseases like TB and HPV kind of diseases. While we have a huge disease burden in lifestyle diseases like diabetic, cardiovascular diseases, and various other diseases like thyroid and PCOD, all of it. So while looking at the access and the device, one parameter which we can look at it as the disease pattern, what is the disease burden of this country, how does it play? Then as you rightly said, the next part which comes in, predominantly the current access and availability is in the cities, we would say, where most of our establishment, which is a tertiary care hospitals, where either tertiary care diagnostic center, tertiary care hospitals, which predominantly provides the access to these kind of devices. Whereas our biggest problem is, let's say, for example, cancer, if we take, the major disease burden of our country in cancer would come in oral and breast. And everybody knows diagnosing cancer very early, which solves a lot of our problem. How do you diagnose it if you don't do it close to the patient in a primary care and secondary care setting? That means the only way that can happen is to build the access in a way where you economically viable product which comes to close to patient. It could not be like a very high quality and highly expensive equipment like the tertiary care hospital. Looking at miniaturized point of care, close to patient, quick diagnosis kind of scenario, which can bring down this, really create an access better. Our medical devices need to really look into what is India's problem, both economic as well as disease or a healthcare burden perspective, and devise a plan to do it so that the access can be really multiplied.
CNBC TV 18 Money Control. CNBC TV 18 Money Control. New Horizon 2.0. Presented by GE.
Let's just head towards closing comments, because this is a government which has listened closely. We've seen a lot of policy initiatives which have come in. There's a lot of initiatives being taken by private companies as well in terms of their key partnerships along with Indian grown multinationals that we've heard of. So I'd like at this point in time to really understand in terms of key asks. Sunil Khurana, let me start with you, since yours is a domestic manufacturer, and that's what we also want to see more of when it comes to medical devices industry. What will it take, you think, in order for many more such BPL medical devices companies to come up in our country and to service the market?
So I would divide it into three categories. First category is that, let's build the planned skill development. This is a one area where government is working, and we are also partnering at many places. Institutes like IISc or IITs are working, but other engineering institutes, we have to have some direction coming and some curriculum change that manufacturing becomes a more attractive. So this is the one area which I think is very key. Second is financials. I mean, any industry will always ask for financials. I don't want to really only look at financial, but PLI is a great scheme. But what it should happen is that companies like us is not even getting qualified in that. Those ceilings are kept very high. Those criteria should be brought to a level where companies like us or even smaller companies are also benefited. I'm setting up a factory, new factory, and we know that whatever we do will not be able to get benefit from that. So that's the one area which government should definitely look at, not only for us, for many more. R&D is key. Unless you have a local R&D and your own technology, it's very hard. Somewhere, some incentive or some support to maybe pick up 50-60% of R&D team cost, very helpful, would be a very interesting. And something which I'm going to now say is, for a very short term, raise the custom duties. I mean, you have to really, today at a very low cost, products are being made in China because they get an electronics component locally. Our silicon revolution is going to take time. Electronics component is going to take still more time, which will be very affordable. Maybe till 3 to 5 years, the products which are made here, if Shravan is making here CT scanner, why should CT scanner be permitted to bring? There are countries who have taken a very tough call. So, some kind of entry barrier of those products, then we all will get more alert, we'll get a little bit more stressed to do all of it. And the last point is medical device under new vertical. That focused approach is going to make a big difference. And it is not that it is not happening, but the moment you have a dedicated ministry or dedicated body with a deep understanding there it will get right. So these are the few points which I want to just cover here as a closing.
Right. So focus exclusively on medical devices. Don't club it in with other industries. And let me go across to Dr. Singh. Dr. Singh, do you think the measures that have been taken, for instance, to set up medical device parks in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, that will really bring in the kind of investment which is required, along with it, the technology which is also required in this particular market? Do you think enough is being done there?
It is essential for the investment in medical devices, but it is not should be costly, because India government or state government has to open many medical colleges. Then it needs many medical devices. So that's not should be very costly. And Telangana and this Andhra people are making so much of this medical devices. So from our part of the country, we are should be alert to make these medical devices, and that not should be costly, because we have to spread all part of the country. All part of the country, are, in all the district level, we are opening a medical college. So in medical college, we need many medical devices for the patients, but cost, that not so be costly.
Girish, if I can come to you, how would you respond, whether it is in terms of a manufacturer or even in terms of looking at the domestic market? What do you think are those major steps that really need to be undertaken now? Because, it could be a case of now is perhaps the best time to act. I mean, we know China is under a bit of a glare. We are in the post-pandemic new learnings curve, and healthcare is perhaps the topmost priority it's ever been for countries, and our own included.
See, first of all, I would look at, there are two aspects of it. One is from the demand aspect of it and supply aspect of it. From the supply aspect of it, this is an opportunity where the Indian companies can certainly become a global player. The current, the improvement in the government regulation and the ecosystem and the industry collaboration, all of it to focus on how do India can make a quality product in this space. India is never considered to be a country where we can produce quality product from the global market, except few odd cases like a GE, Medtronic, and all of them come to India, bring their science and technology and started developing. So we need to look at how we will develop the science and technology and manufacture in India for the global market, which has got a lot of dependency over global regulation. So the Indian government has to really think through why the Indian product, what we produce, how the government, Indian authorities approach this is not recognized by WHO or FDA or any other standard. So we need to push our envelope and make our product quality better, our standards better, regulation better, so that our product can go to global market. That is from the overall how the Indian companies can sustain and succeed in a long-term period. In a short term, our Indian healthcare problem has got a very focused and very specific problems we have. We have a problem of TB, we have a problem of cancer, we have a problem of lifestyle diseases. Then Shravan mentioned about non-communicable diseases. We can clearly focus how do we really solve this problem and what kind of a medical devices we need to produce and manufacture with the high quality, with the Indian cost, or what the Indian public can afford, both in the public health system as well as in the private health system. That's the second important focus. If you do this right for next to 3 to 5 years, along with the government, along with coming up with the proper policies, guidelines, and investment like an SZZ kind of a model, certainly we can in 3 to 5 years time, this industry can exponentially grow, not only for India, for the global market.
Right. Thank you, Girish, for that, the long and the short of it in terms of the nuts and bolts which are required. Now, final word from you, Dr. Shravan, in terms of both the short-term as well as the long-term goals that need to be taken, whether it is on the policy front or whether it is by manufacturers such as yourself to really put India in the medical devices spotlight.
Paramita, I think in the short term, if we're looking at boosting local manufacturing, we definitely need to increase our self-reliance and make and boost demand. Right, that could come through, for example, public-private partnerships, which are already in play. We need to boost local demand to make it more attractive for people. As Sunil and Girish said, we need to make it more attractive for people to get into medtech manufacturing, and that is a function of demand. Probably in the medium term, we need to continue to boost the medtech parks and provide more incentives towards high-end medical devices and eventually reduce our import requirements. I think we've already called this out. We need to have a predictable policy regime, and I believe we are making the right, we're going in the right direction towards that end. As we grow, as we mature as an industry, you take a look at what's happening in the pharmaceutical or automotive sector. They've also had a lot of incentives towards exports. So in the medium to long term, we need to see how we can boost exports and be competitive on a technology as well as cost basis, whether it's a China or any other country. We need to be seen on par with some of the best. Last and certainly not the least, if we want to establish brand India on the world map, we need to have some world-class clinical practices. We need to have training both in the engineering field as well as the medical field. Safety, quality, all these need to come into play to proudly put a stamp of Make in India for India, as well as in India for the world, Paramita. Thank you so much.
Well, that wraps up this special discussion that we've had with some fantastic insights. And thank you to our speakers, Dr. Shravan Subramanyam of Wipro GE HealthCare, Dr. Sarjanand Prasad Singh, President IMA, Sunil Khurana, CEO and MD at BPL Medical Devices, and Girish Krishnamurthy, MD and CEO at Tata Medical Diagnostics. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our viewers as well.
CNBC TV 18 Moneycontrol New Horizon 2.0 presented by GE HealthCare. Focus, ideate, innovate.